What's up guys? So today I've got my hands on two super compact versatile yoga style laptops. So let me introduce you to the Storm 10 and the Piccola 8, both powered by the same Intel N150 processors. But the real question here is how good are they performance wise and what are they good for? Roll the intro. Now first of all, quick look at what you get inside the box. So both laptops come with their user manuals and the same 36 watt power supply. Now if we move on to the price, the Storm 10 can be picked up right now for £250 and the Piccola 8 is priced slightly higher at £287. Now design wise they are both made from a metal unibody, both are yoga style 2-in-1 laptops, so they can both fold back 360 degrees, giving you tablet mode when you need it. And the actual touchscreens on both is very responsive. You can also use both in various angles like tent mode for watching movies in bed and so on and so forth. And what's immediately special about both of these laptops is the fact that they are so compact in size. The Storm 10 weighs only 907 grams and the Piccola 8 weighs 658 grams. So super lightweight and extremely portable, both finished in space grey with all metal bodies. Dimensions: the Storm 10 is 243mm by 177.6mm, and in thickness the Storm 10 is 17.7mm thick, Piccola is 206mm by 130.6mm, and in thickness the Piccola is 17.9mm thick. And to give you some idea of the size, here is how they both compare to my 14-inch MacBook Pro. I also like the fact that there is very little or minimal branding with only one X Plus logo on the lid. Now if we move on to the display, the Storm 10 has a 10.5-inch IPS display with a screen resolution of 1920 by 1280. The Piccola has an 8-inch IPS display with a similar resolution of 1920 by 1200. The screen has some bezels going around and the Storm 10 has a 1 megapixel in the center of the top bezel and the Piccola 8 has a 2 megapixel webcam located on the left corner of the bezel. Now let's check out the ports, starting off with the Storm 10. On the left we have a 3.5mm headphone jack and an exhaust vent to dissipate heat. On the other side we have two full-featured USB-C ports, both supporting fast charging and display out. Next to it you can see a small power button, so you get two 1-watt stereo speakers, one on each side. And as you can see there are no ports on the back. And at the bottom of the laptop you can see we have 4 non-slip rubber feet and another grill across the bottom for ventilation. Now the Piccola 8, on the left side we have a USB-C port which supports display out and also a mini HDMI. So both laptops can display out to a maximum resolution of 2560 by 1440. We also have a full-size USB 3 port and followed by a side-firing speaker grill. On the other side we have a 3.5mm headphone jack, another full-size USB 3 port, micro SD card slot and another side-firing speaker. On the back of the unit you will find an exhaust vent to dissipate heat. Alright, so quick look at internals, starting off with the Storm 10. There are 10 screws to open in order to get inside that case. Let's get them open, shall we? Okay, so remove the 10 screws, case comes off quite easily and here are the internals. So the RAM is on board, it's non-removable RAM. And here is the 512GB M.2 SSD, which can be swapped out for a 2TB drive. But if you do that, you will then need to reinstall Windows. For cooling, you can see we have copper pipes and a cooling fan. And the battery here can be removed and replaced in the future should you need to. Alright, now let's check out the upgrade options for the Piccola 8. Now, first of all, there is a small latch which gives you access to your 2242 SSD, and you can also swap this out for a higher 2TB capacity. Now, if you open 6 more screws, you will gain access to the internals. And once again, soldered onboard RAM, so you can't upgrade the RAM. There is a removable battery, a cooling fan with a heat pipe, and you can see those side-firing speakers on each side. Let's talk about the keyboards. The Storm 10 has a good sized keyboard and spacebar. Numerical and function buttons are separate, which is nice to have. So nicely spaced out keyboard, feels decent to type on with plenty of travel and not too noisy when typing on. And as a bonus, it is also a backlit keyboard, offering 3 levels of brightness, which is great. And you also get a nice, responsive, decent sized trackpad too. Now the Picola 8's keyboard is made up of large keys and small keys. The function buttons are combined with the numerical buttons to save space, and the spacebar is split into 2. It feels good to type on, but you have to get used to the layout, especially with the small delete button and the tiny arrow keys. So it's easy to press the wrong button when you're first time using this laptop. Keys have decent amount of travel and quite silent in operation, and it's nice to see that the keyboard does have a backlight. Although the backlight only has one setting, on or off, you can't change the brightness level of the backlight. Furthermore, the power button does have a built-in fingerprint reader, adding an extra layer of security. And for navigation, the Picola 8 has a track point. Although I had to maximize the cursor speed from settings to make this a bit more easier to use, and you also have your left and right mouse buttons just underneath. Now moving on to power and performance. Both laptops are powered by the same Intel Celeron N150 Alder Lake, which is a quad-core processor clocked at 0.8 GHz and up to 3.6 GHz turbo. Both feature LPDDR5 soldered on-board RAM, and the Storm 10 comes with 16 gigs of RAM, and the Picola comes with 12 gigs of RAM. Both have 512 gigs of M.2 PCIe 3 SSD storage, which can be upgraded and swapped out for a 2TB drive, but if you do this, you will have to reinstall Windows on the new drive. General performance of the N150 is very decent for everyday use, like web browsing, social media, office applications, schoolwork, watching movies, streaming on Netflix, Prime, Disney, YouTube, etc. Now moving on to the benchmarks, starting off with Storm 10, so Geekbench single core score 1126 and multi-core score of 3091. And Picola achieves a score of 1105 and multi-core score of 2649. And in 3D Mark Time Spy, Storm 10 achieves an overall score of 484 versus 480. And in Firestrike, Storm 10 achieves 1428 versus 1450. And in the Antutu benchmark test, the Storm 10 achieves 354K versus 255K. But what about gaming? Well, Celeron processors with Intel graphics are really not known for gaming. Nevertheless, let's test out a few games and see what happens. So we're playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, the old 2011 version. I have the graphics maxed out at 1080p resolution, and we're achieving an average of around 38 frames per second. You can see the frame rates are not consistent either, so that is what you can expect gaming wise. If you try to play a next gen new game title on this, it's probably not going to work, and if it does, you're going to be playing on the lowest graphical settings and you'll be struggling to achieve 30 frames per second. For example, here is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which is not by any means a new release, but on the lowest graphic settings and at 1080p resolution, you can see the game is barely playable, so that should give you a pretty good idea about gaming. Now let's talk battery life. The Storm 10 has a 3800 mAh battery built in and translates to around 7 hours of YouTube streaming. And the Picola 8 has a 3500 mAh battery, which translates to around 6 hours of YouTube streaming. And both laptops do support fast charging, and a 36-watt fast charger is included in the box, which can get you from 0 to 70% in around 1 hour. Now throughout my test, I experienced a solid Wi-Fi connection on both systems. Windows 11 Professional comes pre-installed, activated and ready to use. The OS feels snappy in general operation, the system boots up in seconds thanks to the SSD, and it's a pretty decent lag-free experience with everyday use. I've surfed the web, shopped online, watched online videos, sound quality is very good on both, and here is a quick taste of the sounds. So overall experience for multimedia is quite nice, and the speaker quality and volume is also pretty damn good, and nice to have a headphone jack on the side of both laptops. So there you have it guys, that was my quick overview of both Storm 10 and Picola 8 2-in-1 yoga style laptops. So in a nutshell, I really like the build quality and performance of both of these mini laptops. The display and the rotating hinge are great quality. The keyboards are nice to type on. I really like the super compact size of the Picola 8, but I like the size of the keyboard and trackpad on the Storm 10. Power and performance is more or less the same. Screens are both Full HD IPS and look equally good. For an everyday portable compact laptop with decent battery life and the ability to switch them into tablets with touchscreens, and they both support display out for big screen action, I think you can't go wrong with either of them. Additionally, the Picola 8 has a slightly higher resolution webcam, and the Storm 10 benefits from a larger screen, slightly larger battery, larger keyboard and trackpad, and you get more RAM too. What I really like about both laptops is the build quality feels really robust and well made. The hinges also feel very solid, nothing feels cheap or flimsy. It appears to be a very well made product. Price is actually quite competitive. Most 2-in-1 convertible yoga style laptops usually start from around £300. But for that price, the specification, the chipset, the RAM would not be as good as these mini laptops. In fact, the other brands don't even give Windows. Most of them give you most of them are Chromebooks with 4 gigs of RAM and 12 gigs of internal storage. So in comparison, for well under 300, these mini laptops offer quite a good specification for the price. So bottom line, these mini laptops are good if you need portability and at the same time enough performance to handle everyday office tasks and multimedia consumption. However, if you need a more powerful laptop for gaming or 4K video editing, then I suggest you need to look elsewhere. With all of that being said, if you want to see more of my latest and greatest unbiased tech reviews and videos, then hit the like button, sub to the channel and hit the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.